What's up, you guys? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast. I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler. We're brothers.
We're therapists.
We're not afraid of your questions.
So bring it. Hey, you guys. Welcome to the podcast. Let's break down addiction, Tyler. It's kind of our bread and butter.
Let's do it.
So I got a bunch of questions. So we'll just dive right into these questions and get to as many of them as we can, okay? So to start off, the first question is, how much is it a choice versus a disease?
With addiction?
Yes.
Yeah, this is like the age-old discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah. So this good question is something that we hear all the time, and sometimes when I get these kinds of questions, I think we get stuck on, then what? Like, why does it matter if it's a disease or if it's a choice?
Well, I think, from this, I think is coming from a spouse of an addict, right?
Right.
And so she's probably thinking, if it's a choice, then that hurts a lot worse. Then he could stop. If it's a disease, then it's, I think, easier to have some compassion for somebody who's struggling with a mental health disease, right?
Right, but the flip side of that is if it's a disease, then there's that feeling from the addict side of, well, I can't help myself. This is just the way it is. So
using the disease concept as denial.
Right.
Right? So what do you think it is? Is it a disease? Is it a choice? You're saying it doesn't matter.
Well, I'm saying it may matter, but the real issue here isn't if we get to whether or not it's a disease or it's a choice, then what is more important than whether it's a disease or it's a choice?
I agree with you. Here's what I think. I think both come into play. So addiction, I believe, is a mental health issue. I think, the pathology of addiction is it progresses and it eventually takes your life. It's like diabetes. It's like other diseases, and diabetes affects family members. It changes their life, the caretaker burnout, all of that stuff, right?
Right.
Now, addiction attacks healthy attachment more than any other disease out there.
I agree.
Right? And so there's more pain, there's more resentment, there's more confusion and frustration from the partner than, say, if somebody's dying of cancer, right?
Right.
So yes, I do believe in the disease model of addiction. However, coming back to the choice thing, and I think to your point, Tyler, addiction is a disease that can be managed and that I believe you can heal from through the process of recovery. And you can choose your addiction and living in that addiction, or you can choose to live a life of recovery.
The lifestyle of recovery.
Yes, the lifestyle of recovery, which is a choice to say, I'm going to choose that, as opposed to I'm going to choose to continue to indulge with this addiction. Right?
It's a series of continual choices. And so like I believe in the power of habit. And when we look at the power of habit and how habit forms, it lines itself up perfectly with the disease model of addiction, where there is actual physical chemical change that goes on in the brain. There are loops that happen. There are neurons that fire together and wire together, which means that the brain makes it so that, in a sense, I lose what feels like my choice over the time of establishing the addiction.
Right.
So if I go to the same thing, the same place over and over again, I think you've used this analogy before. If I drive down a wet, muddy road, when I'm stressed, eventually I'm going to carve ruts into that road.
Right.
And pretty soon, I'm already in the ruts and it feels like I have no choice and I'm stuck. And I'm going to go down that same pattern and I don't have my choice back. And when I look at recovery work, a big component of recovery work for me, and the reason why I love it so much, is that I believe it's a series of small choices that bring back the ability to have my agency and choice back.
Yes, freedom.
Freedom. And freedom is the ability to choose.
Yes.
So recovery is the reclamation of that, where I may have given that away through other choices and habits that I formed over the years. And this is what's sad about where we work, is a lot of times those habits were forming before anybody ever knew what they were doing to themselves.
Right. But okay, so here's the thing, is if we believe that addiction is real, if we believe those neural pathways are getting created, the brain's being conditioned that way long before you even realize it, but we also believe that recovery is real at the same time, right? And you and I think uniquely can really speak to that, because we've seen people in the hardest of places with their addictions find powerful recovery and real recovery. Recovery absolutely is real. No question about it.
100%.
No
Redemption.
No question about it. Freedom.
Yes.
And it's not just about not needing to numb out or act out or anything like that. It really changes their heart.
It's more than that.
Yeah.
It's the reclamation of a life.
Right. So it's not one way or the other. It's not, well, it's just a disease, so therefore I'm screwed.
Right.
But it's also not, this is just a choice and you're just totally choosing to do this bad thing, right? It is a disease, but choosing recovery is absolutely possible as well. I remember so I'm going to out you a little bit here.
Okay.
So I was 22 and Tyler was working late shifts and he was just married, and he'd get off at like 3 a.m. and I was up at 3 at night, and he was living with his wife somewhere else.
Yeah, we were newly married. We were probably 2 or 3 years into marriage.
You were applying to grad school. You were very stressed out.
Yeah.
You were you were mowing lawns with me and working UPS at night.
And going to school.
And going to school and applying to grad school and not knowing what your future was. And all of a sudden, I was living at home with my parents at the time. Tyler starts showing up to play this stupid video game.
Oh man, StarCraft is the bane of my existence.
Like, and it's starting to not make sense to me. Like,
right.
Okay, what's actually going on here? And to me, Tyler, it didn't make sense, right?
Like, it didn't make sense to anybody.
So what were you doing?
Right.
Like, why were you going to play that video game?
Right. So if we look at like how addiction starts to form, and this is what I mean by you don't even realize it's happening until you're almost stuck in it, is here I am, basically what should be a grown man acting like a teenage boy.
Yeah.
Right. And here I am supposed to be going home after work at 3 a.m. to get some sleep so I can have the energy for the next day. And instead, I was so overwhelmed by the pressures that I felt, the pressure to provide for a family, the pressure to get into grad school. At that time, I was living with a much more like fixed mindset of if I fail, then the whole world is over.
Right, so the pressure.
And then I had this performance about like I need to be everything to everybody. It felt so good to go numb out to a video game like StarCraft, to the point that eventually that started small. That started with like an hour or two during the daytime. Eventually, right. I'm at mom and dad's house, leaving a wife in our apartment.
Right.
And for 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the night, I'm playing a stupid video game.
Right.
And yet, it gets so much into the habit loop that I didn't even really start to think twice about it. I get off at UPS, I'd be like, sweet, I got a little bit of free time, and I don't want to sleep because I don't want to waste my free time.
Right.
Because this is the only time I've got.
Right.
And here I am, and then you and Rex, our other brother,
start
coming in like Tyler,
mocking
like,
you, like making
hey.
fun of what is, but then deep down I'm a little concerned, like,
right.
but you said exactly what I wanted you to, which was, you hear that story, and I'm not making fun of you.
Well, you can though. Feel
I
free.
know,
Yeah.
but you can hear what he's actually doing with it, and what you're actually doing is you're trying to get some respite from the stress and from the pain, and when you find that respite, it feels so good.
It feels so good. It's almost like that. It's almost like medicine. Like when you got a sunburn and you put aloe vera on your skin. It's almost like emotionally that's what it feels like when you act out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether that's video games or pornography or drugs or whatever it is, Netflix or even that. Do you remember when we used to mow lawns together?
Yeah.
And we would purposely mow like 15 lawns without drinking anything.
It's crazy, stupid.
Just so that we could go into Maverick and fill up that
yes.
64 ouncer, and the first gulp we would just like and let it hit our brains, and we'd be like, that feels so good.
There's the start of my soda addiction.
That's the beginning
right
of
there.
an addiction that continues today.
Yes, it does.
Right?
So So yeah, I mean, it does start to take your agency away. The more you do that, the more you feel that break, all of a sudden you're living to just get that break. And it starts to take over your marriage.
You start to think about it even when you're not doing it.
Right. Yet you don't get the same hit over time, and you're always kind of searching for that hit that you got when you first started.
Eventually, it's just to numb.
It's just
like
to numb.
I got to the point where I didn't even really enjoy StarCraft.
Right.
I just couldn't stop doing it.
Right.
I'd do the same routine of clicks, and I'd be like, oh, well, start a new game. Like,
right.
No, nothing beneficial coming. Right.
I think I was making fun of you the other day in that you were just playing against the computer. So like you weren't even playing against real people, and you were typing in cheat codes.
I was using cheat codes, playing against the computer just so I could have the feeling of winning.
and getting a break from all of the stresses and craziness of life. You guys, I want to let you know Tyler's in full recovery from the StarCraft addiction.
I actually have a bottom line. I don't play video games unless it's with my kids now.
There you go.
Because I know the power of that habit.
Okay, so that was a great question. It led to a lot of things, and it is a choice to not get in recovery, and addiction is a disease. Okay. Next question. This question is, I actually have a couple of them here, so let me look one more. Okay, how do you let your partner know how much pain their addiction causes you?
Oh, man. This one, well, maybe I should let you start on this one since I started on the last one, but this one is one that it gets wrapped up into other forms of emotion here. So basically, I'm hearing, and I'm envisioning a betrayed, so let's just say a betrayed wife here. Okay,
yeah. So we're talking probably sex addiction here.
Probably.
Yeah. So the pain could be very complex and
right. There's a whole bunch of pain there. There's the loss of all the hopes and dreams. There's the loss of trust. There's the fear that goes along with things. There's the wondering about what else they don't know. There's a ton of pain that's going on in the mind or the heart of a betrayed spouse. And one of the worst things that happens thinking that they're doing the right thing is that they don't share any of those feelings. Right. Because I don't want to hurt my partner. I don't want to cause shame. I don't want to be the reason that they're acting out. But then they're carrying this massive burden, and that burden is a story that needs to be spoken and needs to be shared. And I would argue, having been through some of this myself, I would argue it's a benefit to your partner if you can share it in the right way, where they get to see the actual impact of their choices.
Right. I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, I was sitting there at family dinner and my skin was crawling and I felt sick because nobody actually knows what I'm going through. Or I went to church today and we acted like a big happy family and I'm in so much pain, yet, everybody thinks we're just a wonderful family.
And I've got to put on the face.
Right. And so that's one side of it, the hiding side of it. I'm just going to kind of fake it, pretend like things are fine, and I don't want to trigger him more and make his life harder. So that's going to help support him, right? That there's a fallacy there.
Right.
There's another side of it, which is, you know what? I'm in so much freaking pain that I'm going to punish.
Yep.
And I'm going to get it out through aggressiveness, through just anger shaming him.
They need to know how much I hurts by hurting that bad themselves.
Yes.
And I've got to be the one to dictate all of that.
Right. And so it can go both sides of the fence, right?
Right.
And what I say is this. You look at all the different ways that you can respond. Another way that you respond in your pain is, this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hover over him and fix it, so that he doesn't hurt me anymore.
Right. Then he doesn't mess up. I don't get hurt. But the problem with that is now, in this case, she's in control or thinks she's in control of stuff. She's walking on a sandy foundation that will come out from underneath.
Control.
Right. She has no control, but she's trying to have a semblance of it. And then when it falls out from underneath her again, it's not just that she's been betrayed again. She feels a sense of shame and failure that goes along with having not been able to fix it.
Right. Okay, so we're saying all these things, and hopefully you're listening and you're thinking, well, okay, then what does work? Like what?
Right.
What? I mean, her question is
how do I actually show my pain?
Right.
Right.
And I think Tyler spoke to this already, but first and foremost, maintain your self-respect and love for yourself. So, you know what? If you've been attacking, if you've been aggressive, that's probably not who you really are. You're probably a kind, loving person, and that you're not acting in your truth in expressing your pain that way.
Right. You're going to feel bad about yourself in the aftermath, even though you feel like you've spoken your truth and that felt good. You're also going to have that little residue left over on the inside that goes, "Oh, that's not really my character.
It doesn't feel good."
Yeah, I still don't feel better.
Right.
I had a woman. she laughs to me when she tells it, but I can see the pain behind her eyes. Like, one of her favorite things to do when she gets really scared is she calls her husband up and she asks like the most detailed, like horrific questions about his acting out, just so that he has to basically say, "I am a scumbag."
Yeah, she wants him to get to "I'm a scumbag."
And she says, "It feels so good in the moment, but afterwards I feel like, oh man, like, that's not me. Like, why did I do that?" Like, and not to mention, she's not helping things go right for her in the long run, because it's just more shame all around, right? So I think you're right. We kind of get back to the question itself. It's like, if I can get grounded into myself enough to know who I am and state things from my value system, which means there has to be some level of vulnerability in my expression. I have to be able to go to my partner and say, "Hey, when you did these things, this was my experience. And I know it's really hard for you to hear that, but I've got to share this with you."
Okay, Tyler, so what if, you go express your pain that way. You're vulnerable, you're honest, you're not, hiding from things. And let's say the partner responds in a very shame-based, defensive
Any of those ways that we just talked about, they disappear, or they get angry and defensive, or they say, "I can't believe you're shaming me. Like, can't you see how hard I'm working?"
Yeah, so they take your bid for connection to process your pain. Right? And they kind of crap all over it. They just like, I really don't want to hear it. And, or worst case scenario, they wallow and they just say, "I'm horrible and I'm so bad and I'm the worst ever." And they start crying, and next thing you know, it's all about their pain. So what they don't do is hold space for you. Right? So we're saying, go express that vulnerably. It might go poorly.
It probably will at the beginning.
It most likely will. So then what?
Right. So the key here, and this is where I think a lot of partners get messed up, is they go and they actually might do it in an appropriate way and say something like, "Hey, I am simply just devastated, and I'm swimming here, and I don't know if I can trust ever again. I don't know what I'm thinking spiritually or socially or anything else now, and you just need to know that this has rocked my world." Right. He responds in some...
"You think it's rocked your world? Do you know
crazy,
what I've been through?
Yeah, like, you don't know how hard it is, or like, why do you always have to get on my back, or whatever it is. It's like,
you shouldn't be married to me. I'm so horrible."
Yeah, any of that stuff, right? So then he does that. She's left now holding this burden still, and she thinks, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that because now either I shamed him or because I wasn't held, and so I'm bad or something in some way." No, you weren't. Like, the measuring stick is never... measuring stick is never your partner's response.
Yeah, and it's not the amount of attachment or validation you get back.
That's right. Yes. That's right. It's about being able to stand strong in your own truth.
Yes.
And in that aftermath, well, you've been vulnerable. You're going to feel some of that pain. You're going to feel that rejection, whatever it is. You've got to be able to remove yourself and reground yourself into your truth again, which is going to come through self-compassion. It's going to come through connection to other people, your support system, the right kinds of people that can go, "Wow, like, that must have been really hard for you, but nice job."
Yeah.
And I've got to say this, that if you can do that and be consistent in the way that you bring it, you will at least allow yourself to stay in tune with who you are, which means you're less shame-based and shame-driven yourself.
Right.
And I come back to this, you're offering a gift to your partner, whether they like it or not.
Because you're not taking on his stuff by pretending like your pain's not there. Your pain is real.
Or by overblowing your pain so that he never gets to actually
deal with
see
it and see it.
Right.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, Tyler. And it's a really uncomfortable thing to do, I think. When you're married to an addict, you know that rejection's probably going to come to your vulnerable feelings because the addict has so much shame.
They don't know how to hold it.
Right? To go forth and express it it's really important that you have what Tyler's talking about on the back end. You have the tools, you have the support system, you have the way to process, you have the way to ground yourself, connect to God. Like all of those things are there so you can say, you know what, I'm trying with my relationship. I'm putting myself out there to try to have some connection. But in the end, I'm going to be able to be okay, whether I get that validation or not. Right?
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, absolutely. It is good for them to understand what your pain is. And
it's okay to speak it more than once.
Well, and here's another thing too, Tyler, especially with sex addiction. When a spouse is willing to open up about their pain, and I hope if any guys struggling who've betrayed your partner, or I shouldn't say guys, anybody who has betrayed your partner, your spouse's pain is a huge opportunity for you to rebuild trust. If you can step into that pain with them, empathize with them in that moment, what you're saying to them is, yeah, I've hurt you, but I'm here with you through the hard times, and I really do care, and I want you to be able to use me. No, I shouldn't say use me. I want you to be able to allow me to support you, right?
Yeah.
And so it opens up an opportunity for them. If you don't give them that opportunity, then they'll never be able to build trust.
I tell my clients this all the time. If your spouse is coming to you really, really angry, that's a gift, because it means they still care and they're looking for you to just hold something for them.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. Okay. Okay. Let's do one. I'm going to do one that's just a little bit maybe less deep here. It says, I think my husband has an addiction to his phone. How can I approach this? I don't think that's happening with anyone around the world.
No one has that. Like, right? I would first say that if I'm asking that question, where I would go for myself is I'm going to look myself in the mirror first and say,
look at is it going on?
Is it going on for me too? Because this is probably legitimate, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think if we broaden that question out a little bit, we could say, I think a loved one has a problem with blank.
Yeah.
With anything.
Yeah.
Like how do I approach a loved one?
Disconnecting from life.
When I think, how do I approach the loved one who seems to be addicted to anything?
Right. Well, so here's what I think, Tyler, is the fact of the matter is, I think most people have some addictions going on, right? Like most all of us. So, like my addiction to TV or sugar or whatever it is. On my spouse's side of things, those addictions are either going to butt up against her truths and push against those truths or not, right?
Right.
So like if I watch an hour of TV or whatever and she's fine with it and she's not feeling like it's really getting in the way of our lives or whatever, then my addiction's going to be there and she doesn't have to confront it or deal with it or whatever. Him being on his phone is, and hang in here with me as I say this, him being on his phone is his business until it becomes your business. When it starts to break down, you realize your boundaries are being broken. Are you taking care of the kids way more often because your husband's not there to support you?
Or are you sitting there in a conversation and you say the same thing 4 times and he goes, what'd you just say?
Yeah, and so it's disrespectful.
Yeah, there's
so
no
your boundary
respect.
is like you're breaking that value of respect that I have for myself. Mm-hmm. So now it's not your job to say get off your phone. It's your job to go to him and say, this is who I am. This is what works for me.
Right.
This is how I feel. So I would say speak about you as you approach it. Be willing to step into conflict with it. You'll probably have a hard conversation that feels a little bit, bad when you're done with it. But at least you're starting the conversation of saying, this is where I'm at, this is who I am, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you might be able to, I think, again, starting from inside out. So as you're saying, the values that I'm saying, so if I'm wanting to connect with my wife and she's on her phone all the time, I'm not going to be like, you're always on your phone, like, you got a problem, you need to get off of that. Right. It's going to be more like, you know what, I value connecting with you so much, and sometimes I feel like I'm not able to do that, and I wonder if the phone's in the way.
Yeah.
Right? You hear the difference in those two things?
Yeah. Much different than you're always on that stupid game on your phone. Like, yeah, okay, we're trying to have a conversation. There you go again.
Right.
Like that's not going to be very effective.
Not for what I'm hoping for, because behind what that statement is, can you see me? Can you connect with me? I want to be respected in our relation. Whatever it is, that never actually gets spoken when it's done from, you got a problem. You got a real problem, right? Right?
Usually what you get back is, well, you got a problem too.
Right. Yeah. And then it's like, well, let's fight about it.
Where do you go from
we'll
there?
get lost in the weeds somewhere.
Right.
Right. And so it's if I can stay true to the values, again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, but then also I think being able to include the benefit that somebody else is going to have by making some different choices. Like I'm much more engaged. I basically what I'm saying is I want more of you. I want more of our relationship. I want to be more connected. I just can't do that because it feels like there's this thing in the way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is you're being much more vulnerable. You're being much more positive, and you're not attacking. And
you're still speaking the truth, though.
What you're not doing is trying to use force and control to get them to stop. You're using your power and stepping into that power and honesty in order to get them to see what's actually going on. So
right.
Yeah. All right, you guys, we just scratched the surface on addiction today. So this is kind of Tyler and I's baby. This is what we know inside and out. So we'd love more questions about addiction. We'd love more questions about being in a relationship with somebody with an addiction. So please keep them coming. And thank you for listening today. Please rate and review the podcast.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here with us, and we definitely want your specific questions. So thank you.
Yep. See you guys.